Greece, home to one of the most famous citadels on the planet, the Acropolis. Here, the most emblematic monuments of antiquity seem to watch over the Greek capital. The imposing Parthenon, spanning more than 2,000 square meters. The Propylaea, the Temple of Athena Nike, and the Erechtheion. 4 iconic buildings made up of 100,000 tons of marble, which the ancient Greeks hoisted to an altitude of 157 meters more than 2 millennia ago.
You feel like you're kind of looking at something that humans thousands of years ago, and for all the time in between, have been looking at and going, wow, what an incredible monument that is. How did they build it?
For nearly 2 centuries, multiple generations of archaeologists and historians have set to unravel the secrets of the ancient Greeks and discover how and why they built these marble giants.
Each block was made for a specific location. You wouldn't be able to fit it anywhere else in the monument. The builders who worked on the Acropolis were clearly the best in the region.
Thanks to computer-generated reconstructions and the greatest experts in ancient Greece, you are about to discover how Greek builders managed to extract and transport tens of thousands of marble blocks to build these temples in just 15 years.
They were for sure fantastic craftsmen and workers. And if you work here, you can see it every day in the perfection and the precision in the marble surface.
You are about to uncover the engineering skills that the ancient Greeks had to develop to assemble marble blocks weighing more than 10 tons, as well as the anti-seismic systems concealed at the very heart of the stones.
Greece lies in the seismic arc of Europe. They undoubtedly took that into account in designing their monuments.
You'll also see the many optical corrections hidden in the lines of these monuments that border on architectural perfection.
The Athenians of the time used the most advanced technological refinements that were known to mankind.
It's just one of the most iconic sites archaeologically ever.
This is the story of the Acropolis and the Greek builders who managed to master marble to build an architectural ensemble like no other in the world. In southeastern Europe, Greece is nestled on the northern shores of the Mediterranean basin. Its capital, Athens, stretches over 40 square kilometers. It is home to one of the most iconic sites in the world, rising 157 meters above sea level, the Acropolis. This rocky plateau spans over an area of 4.5 hectares, the equivalent of more than 4 soccer fields. Athens is indeed one of the oldest cities in the world. Its history began more than 6,000 years ago. In the Neolithic period, prehistoric men settled in the region. They first took shelter in caves on the sides of this limestone boulder. Then, over the next few thousand years, the population settled more permanently. In the Bronze Age, around 1600 BC, the first great Greek civilization settled in the region, the Mycenaeans. These warriors were the first to make their mark on the famous boulder. All around the summit, the Mycenaeans erected imposing ramparts, measuring more than 3 meters high by 4 meters wide. Today, a few parts of these fortified walls are still visible. They are the oldest remains of the Acropolis. Insurmountable, these ramparts were likely intended to protect a citadel that no longer exists. According to certain archaeologists, the fortifications housed a royal palace, as well as dwellings for the elite. The Mycenaeans dominated the region and colonized the territories of present-day Greece until the mighty civilization suddenly collapsed.
Several theories have been put forward for the disappearance, or the collapse rather, of the Mycenaean civilization. It might have been caused by raids from outside, invasions from other people. It might have been caused by catastrophic natural events, including earthquakes or even volcanic explosions elsewhere, which then led to a string of events that changed the environment. We simply do not know.
Despite the collapse of the Mycenaeans, the region continued to be inhabited. In 800 BC, the various hamlets scattered around the hill created a city-state with common rules and gods. According to Greek mythology, two gods coveted the ancient city: Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and Poseidon, the god of the sea.
The two gods struggled against each other in order to gain the favor of the Athenian people. Poseidon used his trident and he offered seawater, but Athena, in turn, provided the olive tree, which was, in a sense, the natural tree of Athens, and she won the competition, hence the name of the city-state.
From then on, the Acropolis became a place of worship to the glory of the goddess. Unfortunately, the first temples erected on the hill in her honor were destroyed over the centuries. Archaeologists therefore focused their attention on the remains of these early monuments to picture the Acropolis of ancient times. At the end of the 19th century, archaeological excavations revealed a strange succession of limestone blocks under the base of the present Parthenon. Scientists then discovered that the Greeks had profoundly altered the boulder in approximately 490 BC. On the north side of the site, they dug the rock to flatten the surface. To the south, at the edge of the cliff, the Greeks piled limestone to a height of 11 meters. Each of these blocks measured about half a cubic meter and weighed several hundred kilos. The goal was to build a gigantic platform 77 meters long and 31 meters wide. To do so, the Greeks arranged no less than 8,000 cubic meters of limestone. That's the equivalent of the volume of nearly 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools. They created a perfectly flat surface at the top of the hill to hold a temple in honor of the goddess Athena. The pre-Parthenon. This building no longer exists, but the stones that made up the monumental platform intended to hold it are still clearly visible on the site.
Here we can see the southwest corner of the large platform on which the pre-Parthenon was built. This here is the top level. On the other corner of the base, you can count up to 22 layers. They were built very well, as evidenced by these bands. They did an excellent job.
During their excavations, the archaeologists were also able to determine the shape of the pre-Parthenon. Considerably elongated, the building comprised 6 columns on its facade and 16 columns on the sides. This monumental temple housed 2 halls and is believed to have measured 23 meters wide by 67 meters long. Its height is estimated at nearly 14 meters. It was a building of exceptional dimensions, intended to celebrate the power of Athens.
It was built in the aftermath of the Battle of Marathon, which was fought between the Athenians and the Persians in 490 BCE, and which led to an unexpected victory of the small city-state of Athens over the mighty Persian Empire. So most scholars believe that this was a victory monument that celebrated the victory of the Athenians against the Persians, and a building that was funded with the spoils taken from the Persian army.
On the present site occupied by the Parthenon, archaeologists also discovered marble blocks dating from the construction of the pre-Parthenon.
The pre-Parthenon is an extremely important turning point in the architectural history of the Acropolis. This was the very first temple on the Acropolis to be built entirely of marble.
For the first time in their history, the Greek builders embarked on the construction of a temple entirely composed of marble. At the time, this rare and extremely expensive material was only used to make little sculptures. It was imported in small quantities from islands several days away by boat. In these circumstances, how did the Athenians obtain the raw material necessary to erect such a building? A few decades before the construction of the pre-Parthenon, the Greeks had discovered a hill located 17 kilometers northeast of Athens, Mount Pentelicus. This mountain, at an altitude of over 1,000 meters, contained large quantities of high-quality marble. Quite the windfall for the ancient builders.
The marble of Mount Pentele is particularly good quality because it's very hard, it polishes to a very shiny texture, but also naturally it has iron oxide in it, which gives a little bit of a more yellow glow than some of the other marbles.
For their buildings, the Greeks had to extract blocks of marble that could weigh up to 13 tons each, the equivalent of the weight of 2 elephants. That means the extraction of such quantities of rock required extensive know-how. First, small slits were cut by the Greeks around the chosen block. Then they placed iron wedges, which they struck simultaneously with mallets. They repeated the operation hundreds, if not thousands of times in order to cut out the block. Then they used heavy wooden levers, capable of multiplying a man's strength by 30. These levers allowed them to gradually detach the block from the main rock.
To quarry marble is going to take a very long time, about 2 months per block. You know, it's exhausting work. The Greeks used clever kind of instruments like pulleys and levers to try and lessen the manpower that is needed, but it's still a huge feat of engineering to be able to create these monuments.
Once the marble block was extracted, the men worked it on site to obtain the desired shape. For example, a rough tambour that would later be used to erect the columns. But once these blocks were partially cut, they still had to be transported.
We do know that they needed dozens, if not hundreds, of expert workers and especially draft animals that would carry the individual